Find what makes you feel good. I have a son who can't eat garlic. If I insisted on him eating garlic, none of us would be happy. It's a matter of what your body tolerates. And I say that's the physician within you. What is it? The essence of doing that is feeding that person within you, not just satisfying it, but feeding it what it wants to eat. I like fresh salads. I like prunes and raisin bran for breakfast with milk, lactose milk, because that's what works with my body.
Ultimately, it's not what's in the food, it's what's been done to the food that matters. Everything fructose does to the mitochondria is designed to inhibit its functioning. It's metabolic health that drives what we should be doing. Because if something is not metabolically healthy, we shouldn't be doing it, because it means it's killing us. There are 7 classes of fats in our diet, 7. And some of them will save your life, and some of them will kill you. Okay, there's a big spectrum all the way from one end to the other. Let's take them in order so that people can understand what they are and how they work, and where do you find them. So the most important and the most valuable fatty acid is omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s are heart healthy, they're anti-inflammatory, they're anti-Alzheimer's, because they contribute to neuronal structure and function. And it has been shown that when you are omega-3 deficient, you get multiple diseases, including cardiovascular disease and depression. And omega-3s are very sparse in our diet. We don't get enough. And the question is, where do you get omega-3s from? Well, there are 2 places you can get omega-3s from. Okay. You can get them from vegetables. So vegans can get one kind of omega-3. There are 3. They can get one kind. You can get one called alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. And ALA is good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's a good thing. It is anti-inflammatory. And so it actually affords cardiovascular protection. And that is good. However, the other 2 omega-3s, one is called EPA, or eicosapentaenoic acid, which is necessary for neural transmission. And the third one is called DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, which is necessary for neuronal structure and membrane stability. Those only come from marine life. They only come from fish. Now, do the fish make omega-3s? No. The fish eat the omega-3s. So what makes the omega-3s? Algae. Algae make the omega-3s. The fish eat the algae. We eat the fish. We are getting our omega-3s third hand. Now, vegans don't eat fish. So the question is, how are vegans going to get the EPA and the DHA? And they need the EPA and the DHA because the conversion of ALA, which they do get, to EPA and DHA, which they don't get, is extremely poor. ALA almost doesn't get converted to EPA and DHA. And you need EPA and DHA. So I worry about vegans. So they need to supplement. Vegans need to supplement. And the question is, will they supplement? Because fish oil still comes from fish. And so that's a problem. And not only that, but you have to take fish oil capsules from fish that ate algae. Well, that means wild fish, because farm fish don't eat algae. Farm fish eat corn. And corn is filled with omega-6s. And we're going to get to that at the end. Remember, we said there are 7 classes. That's number 6. That's like on the worst side. All right? So omega-3s are super important. They contribute to mitochondria. They contribute to neuronal membrane stability. They contribute to suppression of inflammation, cardiovascular stability. There are a whole host of things that omega-3s do for you that are positive, that are in your best interest in terms of health. And we don't get enough. Number 2, monounsaturated fatty acids, oleic acid, found in olive oil. Now, This is a very good fatty acid. And the reason it's very good fatty acid is because it is the endogenous ligand. Oleic acid is the endogenous ligand for a receptor in your liver called PPAR alpha, peroxisome proliferation activated receptor alpha. And this is the fuel gauge on the liver cell, basically telling the liver to work more efficiently and work better. And so it has a lot to do with energy dynamics. And so when you are low in PPAR alpha, you don't burn energy as well. It has an effect on mitochondria. So olive oil is a good a good fatty acid. The only problem with olive oil is that the bond, the double bond that caused it to be monounsaturated, because that's what we referred to when we talked about unsaturated, is the double bonds in the fatty acid, which is a long chain of carbons. Okay, there are two kinds of fatty acids. There's cis fatty acids and there are trans fatty acids. You want cis fatty acids. And the reason is because we don't have the enzyme to break a trans double bond. Olive oil is cis fatty acid. That's good. But if you heat an olive oil, if you heat oleic acid past its smoking point, which is relatively low for olive oil, 310 degrees Fahrenheit, 165 degrees centigrade, okay, which is easy to do in a saute pan. What you do is you put enough heat across, enough energy across that double bond that it will actually flip. And now you have created a trans fatty acid right in your skillet. And that is poison. We're going to get to that as number 7. So you got to be careful about olive oil. Olive oil is meant to be consumed at room temperature. Number 3, polyunsaturated fatty acids. So polyunsaturated fatty acids are also good. They are good for several reasons. They are good because they are anti-inflammatory, but they also can flip their double bonds, and there are more double bonds to flip. The good news is most of the polyunsaturated fatty acids have a higher smoking point, so it's a little harder to make that trans fat switch. That's true. But it's also been shown that if you consume too many polyunsaturated fatty acids, you're going to end up with immune problems with your immune system. Number 4, saturated fatty acids. Now, everyone thinks saturated fatty acids are the devil incarnate. They think that is the worst of all the fatty acids. And the reason they think that is because that's what we were told for 45 years. That's what, Ansel Keys told us back in the 1960s and 70s. Saturated fat was evil, okay, and why we all needed to go low fat because saturated fat was bad for you. In addition, because saturated fat is animal fat, okay, comes from, lard and from pigs and from cows, and saturated fat, if you get rid of saturated fat, that means you're getting rid of the cows and the pigs and the goats and everything. And the vegans would like that very much. So there's sort of a feed-forward problem there. Turns out saturated fat is not one saturated fat. There are 2. There's even-chain saturated fatty acids, which are what's in red meat. And then there are odd-chain saturated fatty acids, which are what's in dairy. Turns out the odd-chain saturated fatty acids are metabolized differently than the even-chain. And also the odd-chain saturated fatty acids have a different phospholipid signature. They have a tail on the end, which makes them polar, which makes them actually do very different things in the body because they can basically bind to other things and activate other things. That phospholipid is very important. And it turns out that phospholipid signature is anti-inflammatory. So it turns out the dairy saturated fat is actually anti-inflammatory, whereas red meat saturated fat is not. But it's not pro-inflammatory either. In converse to what Ansel Keys told us. So saturated fat, neither good nor bad from that standpoint. And dairy saturated fat, actually good. Number 5, medium chain triglycerides. So these are very short triglycerides, usually on the order of about 10 to 14 carbons long, whereas a standard fatty acid would be 16 to 20 or 22 even carbons long. So 10 to 14 carbons. Turns out these are metabolized differently. They are absorbed differently. They are not absorbed in my cells and go through the lacteals and the lymphatic system. They end up going straight to the liver. Now, lots of people are excited about medium chain triglycerides because they're relatively high in coconut oil. And coconut oil is on every paleo and every vegan, menu as being a primary, fat to cook in. And there may be some value to that. But the problem is that when your liver is presented with both saturated fat and medium chain triglycerides, you're basically overwhelming your mitochondria's ability to oxidize. And so you can end up laying down more liver fat, and that can be a problem too. So medium chain triglycerides are sort of a good news, bad news deal, depending on what else you're eating. Number 6, omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 fatty acids are what are found in seed oils. So soybean oil, etc. They are pro-inflammatory. Okay, omega-6s are the precursors, so like linoleic acid is omega-6. Remember, the other one's alpha-linolenic acid, ALA. This is linoleic acid, LA. They are not the same. They are very different. Okay, one's omega-3, the other one's omega-6. They sound the same, but they're not. They are the precursors of arachidonic acid, and arachidonic acid is the precursor to all of the pro-inflammatory cytokines, thromboxanes, eicosanoids, leukotrienes. Okay, all things that generate inflammation. Now, you need inflammation, otherwise you'd be eaten by the maggots. You need inflammation to be able to clear an infection. Okay, so in an acute situation, omega-6s are good because they will help you get rid of, whatever is trying to invade your body. But you certainly don't want that inflammation to be going on willy-nilly without an acute stimulus. And the problem is the more omega-6s, the more chronic inflammation. And that's bad for you every which way. And, will ultimately lead to early demise. So keeping the omega-6 levels down is wise. And omega-6s basically have taken over our entire diet. We talk about the need for an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of about 3-to-1. Optimally, it should be 1-to-1, but we can do with 3-to-1 or even 4-to-1 and still be reasonably healthy. The problem is our current ratio in America is somewhere between 20 and 25-to-1. Way too many omega-6s, way too few omega-3s. So we need to boost those omega-3s and try to bring down the omega-6s. Now, bringing down the omega-6s is a little bit controversial. Like, for instance, Dariush Mozaffarian thinks we don't need to do that. We do need to raise the omega-3s. He thinks that's enough. I'm not so convinced. I think we do need to get those omega-6s down. And then finally, number 7, the devil incarnate, trans fats. And lots have been written about that. And, the very first trans fat was synthesized in 1902. Crisco was the first one that was patented in 1911. By 1920, they had appeared in virtually all baked goods in America. They are the reason for the 10-year-old Twinkie. And the reason is because bacteria can't digest the trans fats because they can't break the trans double bond. Well, guess what? Our mitochondria are refurbished bacteria. We don't have that enzyme either. We can't cleave that trans double bond either. So basically, a trans fat sits in your liver, never comes out, ultimately leads to fatty liver, cardiovascular disease, basically, it's basically like consuming poison because you can't get rid of it. So there are your 7 fats. And we are getting way too many of the wrong ones and not nearly enough of the right ones. And because of that, we are experiencing mitochondrial dysfunction just on that basis alone. Is there a good reason to drink milk? That's what you're asking. All right. So the answer to that is, I believe the answer to that is yes. Now, this is a little complicated. Milk generates an enormous amount of visceral reaction. So let me unpack it. Let me take it apart for you. There are some people who are intolerant to lactose. Okay, full stop, stay away from it. There are some people who are intolerant to certain milk proteins and develop a, milk protein allergy. Stay away from it. Okay. You will know, because if you consume milk and you end up having enormous GI side effects, okay, that's probably a problem. Okay. If that's true, what you should try to do is you should try to take some lactate. So, lactase as a supplement, and see whether or not you still have it. And if you still do, just stay away from it. That is probably, those two things, lactose intolerance and milk protein allergy, is probably about 20% of the population. So not insignificant. There are a lot of people. African Americans have a significant increased risk of lactose intolerance. Jews have an increased risk of lactose intolerance. But that can be mitigated by taking lactase by mouth. By the way, I do. That's how I consume dairy, is with lactate, okay? Because I'm Jewish, the way it is. Okay, now the rest. What about the rest of us? Is there something in milk that's worthwhile? Number one, there's lots of amino acids, and that's good. Number two, there's lots of fatty acids, including some essential fatty acids. So that's good. Number three, there's a lot of calcium. Now, here's the problem with the calcium story. Everyone says you need calcium. You do. You absolutely do. No question. Calcium for bones, calcium for muscle functioning. Calcium is, calcium for hormone release. Okay, calcium is essential. And milk is a very good source of calcium. So you would say, well, then you should drink milk because of the calcium. And we tell postmenopausal women to drink milk because of the calcium, right? We give them vitamin D too, right? Wrong. This is the mistake. And the reason is not because there's not calcium, there is, but because there's way more phosphorus in milk. In order to absorb calcium, you have to have a calcium phosphate product that is conducive to absorption. And the problem is that the phosphate binds the calcium. So it becomes calcium phosphate or calcium biphosphate or diphosphate, and makes it unavailable for absorption. So in other words, in order to absorb calcium, you have to have calcium without phosphate. And that's not milk. That's other foods, but it's not milk. So in fact, the calcium that's in milk is, for the most part, unabsorbable. And that's one of the reasons why giving milk to people with osteoporosis doesn't seem to benefit them. In fact, might even hurt them. Now, can you give calcium pills? Yes, you can give calcium pills, but does that fix osteoporosis? No, that doesn't fix osteoporosis either. And the reason is because the calcium just gets absorbed and goes right through you, does not end up in the bone. You have to do some things to the bone in order to get that calcium into the bone. And unfortunately, vitamin D is not the answer to that. That's why all of these trials of calcium and vitamin D in postmenopausal women have failed. So the notion that you can actually reverse osteoporosis by drinking milk, which is, of course, this, common urban myth that's out there, does not work. Algal oil. Okay. I know a lot about algal oil. Okay. We have researched it in part for this big study we did in Kuwait, which I'm sure we will get to. Algal oil is DHA. Algal oil is DHA. And DHA is important for neuronal structure. No question, no argument. So if you're not getting your DHA from anywhere, then algal oil is a way to get DHA. But algal oil is not a source of EPA. Now, EPA is necessary for neurotransmission. The EPA is the thing that makes fish oil smell like fish. DHA is pretty clean. So it's easy to add DHA to stuff. It's easy to add algal oil to stuff. But EPA is another story because EPA carries that fishy smell along with it. So if you are grinding up salmon livers to get EPA and DHA, you'll get both. Okay, but if you're going to just take the algae and basically develop this clean, colorless, tasteless, odorless algal oil that you basically can add to food, they've had to remove the EPA for that reason. So, in fact, algal oil provides an important source of DHA, but it is not a significant source of EPA for that reason. So that remains a problem. But there are two things that are low in a vegan diet that are an issue, and they're two amino acids, tryptophan and methionine. So tryptophan is the rarest amino acid, and methionine is the second rarest amino acid. And for the most part, vegetable protein is relatively low in both tryptophan and methionine. And you need both. Tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is the contentment, happiness neurotransmitter, does a lot of things. And your gut bacteria make serotonin, but they need tryptophan in order to do it. And if they don't have the tryptophan to do it, then you get all sorts of issues in your gut, including gut inflammation and also the lack of carriage of serotonin up the afferent vagus nerve to the brain. And so tryptophan depletion is associated with irritability and depression. And also methionine. And methionine is a primary source of methyl groups. And you need methyl groups because you have to methylate proteins. It's essential. And also because there's sulfur. And so methionine, both methyl and also sulfur. And you need the sulfur as a reducing agent, an antioxidant, in order to prevent oxidation. And so methionine is a primary contributor to S-adenosine methionine, which is necessary to create glutathione. And glutathione is the liver's endogenous antioxidant. So if you're methionine deficient, you're going to be glutathione deficient, in which case your liver is going to have decreased oxidative capacity, which is not good because that's a great way to damage your liver too. Best place, by the way, for tryptophan and methionine is fish. If I could wave a magic wand, I would basically provide every vegan in the country with the knowledge that if they just ate a little bit of fish to go along with their veganism, they could solve all their nutritional problems. If you ate fish twice a week, you'd have more than enough. If you eat fish once a week, kind of depends on where you go for your fish. Because if it's farmed fish, no. If it's wild fish, probably yes. It's just that simple. The goal is to keep your consumption of added sugars below 25 grams a day. That would be 6 teaspoons. That's about what your liver can handle. Very similar to, by the way, to what your liver can do with alcohol. That's about as much as your liver can handle alcohol too. And the reason is because alcohol and fructose are metabolized the same way. So it makes sense that about 6 teaspoons of sugar, therefore 3 teaspoons or 12 grams of fructose, 25 grams of sugar, because they're 50-50, would be sort of the maximum. If you eat whole food, you have nothing to worry about. Because if you eat whole food, your fructose content beyond fruit is minimal. And the fruit has fructose, but not very much, and you're not going to absorb it because of the fiber. So, the goal is to eat as unprocessed a diet as you can. And whether you want to go more toward the plant-based or whether you want to go more toward the animal-based, I think that's up to you. What do you prefer? Okay. I don't have a horse in the race. Either one will work. Either one can be healthy. Now, if you go extremes on either side, there might be problems depending on how you do it. So, there you might need supplementation. But if you stick in the middle, you can go either way. I personally think a pescatarian diet is like the best diet. That's the one I would choose if I could get, everybody to recognize that fish has some really good things in it and things you can't get pretty much anywhere else. And so you want to eat mostly vegetables? Fine, great, terrific. Add a little bit of fish so you can get your omega-3s and your tryptophan and your methionine and, we're, good to go. I eat meat. I shouldn't say I'm a pescatarian because that suggests I don't eat meat. I'm sort of a flexitarian is really what I am. Let me be honest. I love fish. I eat fish as often as I can, but I do eat meat. You might see me barbecuing. No question. I consider myself a flexitarian more than a pescatarian.